You ever find yourself stuck in a relationship pattern that you just can't seem to shake? You know the one. You meet someone, it feels great, but before you know it, you're right back in that same old role of, well, doing everything. Today, we're going to dig into the hidden psychology behind this. We're going to talk about a concept that might just change how you see relationships for good, the architecture of indispensability.
So, let's talk about this pattern. It's this habit of overgiving. And the tricky part is, it creeps in so quietly you might not even realize it's happening. That is, until you're totally burnt out. Let's see if this story rings a bell for you.
Let me just ask you straight up. Does this feel familiar? That nagging feeling that if you weren't putting in all the work all the time, the entire relationship would just stop?
You become the default planner, right? You're the one making the dinner reservations, figuring out what to do on the weekend, remembering all the important dates. You're carrying the entire mental load because deep down, it feels like if you don't, no one will.
And it goes way beyond just planning. You're also the one who's always accommodating. Their schedule, what they want to eat, their needs, somehow they just always seem to take priority. You get really good at twisting your own life to fit perfectly inside of theirs. And underneath all of that work, all that effort and planning, there's this quiet, nagging fear. It's this terror that if you stopped doing all of it, if you weren't so incredibly useful, you could just be replaced.
So where on earth does this come from? Well, this pattern isn't some kind of character flaw. It's actually a learned strategy. And its roots often go way back to an early life experience that totally shapes how you connect with people as an adult.
This quote really it hits the nail on the head. If you grew up feeling like you were never really anyone's top priority, that feeling doesn't just vanish into thin air. It becomes the actual blueprint you use to build your relationships later on. This feeling is built on a foundation of shaky, unpredictable support. It creates this deep-seated anxiety that, hey, maybe you could be swapped out for someone else at any moment. So you learn a really important lesson, and you learn it young. To make sure you have a spot, you have to prove your value by what you do.
Okay, now this is where the brain gets incredibly smart. When it's faced with this fear of being abandoned, it doesn't just sit there and panic. No, it gets to work. It develops this really sophisticated protective strategy. It literally starts to build a fortress.
And we call that fortress the architecture of indispensability. Think of it as a psychological blueprint with one main goal: to make you so vital, so helpful, so absolutely essential to another person's life that they couldn't even imagine replacing you. It's a survival mechanism for the heart. So let's break down how this architecture gets built, piece by piece. First, you sense that support is inconsistent, it's unreliable. That creates a deep-seated fear of being swapped out. So what do? You develop an overgiving strategy. It's all driving towards that one ultimate goal: becoming irreplaceable. But here's the kicker, the really cruel irony. This brilliant survival strategy, this fortress you've spent your whole life building to keep you safe, it has this catastrophic flaw. It actually ends up creating the exact situation you were trying so hard to avoid.
Yeah, this brilliant defense has a huge blind spot. There's a fundamental miscalculation in the blueprint that doesn't just fail to protect you, it backfires spectacularly. It leads you right back to square one. And here is that massive disconnect. Your goal, your entire reason for doing all of this, is to prove you're indispensable so you can finally get consistent care. But the signal you're sending out into the world, it's something else entirely. A potential partner doesn't see your need for consistency. They see someone who is amazing at putting up with their inconsistency. So it becomes the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy. You basically become a magnet for the exact people who need someone to overfunction, for people who are drawn to inconsistency and who require you to be indispensable just to keep things going. Your solution has become the magnet for your original problem.
So what do? I mean, it can feel like you're just trapped in this cycle forever. But you're not. The first and most powerful step to changing this isn't about doing more, it's about seeing more. It all starts with awareness.
So let's pull this all together. The most important thing to get is this: your habit of overgiving isn't a flaw. It's a brilliant but outdated survival strategy that was born from a fear of being replaced. Your brain built this incredible architecture of indispensability to keep you safe. But the crazy thing is, now it's accidentally trapping you in a cycle with the very people who poke at that original wound. Just understanding that this architecture even exists, that's revolutionary.
seeing it for what it is, a protective strategy, not some personal failing. That gives you the power to start drawing up some new blueprints. Because you can't fix a problem you can't even see.
And that leads me to a final and maybe the most important question of all. What would it actually feel like to put down the tools, to stop building, and to trust that you could be chosen just for who you are, not for everything you do? What would that change?